passport progress as well.
Sarah Pochin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Prime Minister admit to the British people that this deal takes this country back under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, which is now able once again to overrule our courts, surrendering our judicial sovereignty?
No, I mean, that's just wrong under the agreement. There's an independent arbitration. It's the same. It's the same as the Windsor framework, which you negotiated. It is an important point. It's an independent arbitration process. There's the same process for pretty well every trade deal that's struck, not just by us and other countries, but most other countries. In this particular case, if the independent arbitration needs reference on a point of law, it's referred to the ECJ, which then refers it back to the independent arbitrator to make a decision. So that's how it operates.
Josh Dean.
Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for his statement today and warmly welcome this landmark deal with the European Union? And can I welcome in particular the commitment to work towards a youth experience scheme to once again allow our young people to live, work and travel freely in Europe? Does the Prime Minister agree with me that while this Labour government is taking important steps to open up opportunities that will shape our young people's future, the party opposite is dangerously stuck in the past?
Well, I would agree with that. I think they're lost in the past. I think they're lost altogether now. They're on a decline into oblivion. As I say, a once great party that used to support trade deals is now against every single trade deal. It's a pretty extraordinary turnaround.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Paragraph 27 of the Common Understanding published yesterday requires the immediate application of European Union rules relating to food, sanitary and phytosanitary safety. Can the Prime Minister set out what measures would be open to the EU should this Parliament choose not to adopt those new European Union laws?
The first thing I would say is this. We're not making an argument for lowering our standards. And therefore, we're proud to have high standards at the moment. We want to maintain those high standards. But there will, of course, be provision, should the occasion arise, for dealing with any conflicts that may arise.
Rosie Writing.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Business and Trade Committee visited Brussels earlier this year and we saw firsthand how the previous Conservative government damaged our relationships with our close trading partners and British businesses paid the price. Can the Prime Minister confirm that it is this Labour government that is putting our national interests first and getting the deals that show Labour is the party of business?
Well, I can. We've approached this on a serious, pragmatic basis. We've got to deal with 10 strands that massively takes our country forward. That's on top of the India deal and the US deal. They spent many years failing to get these deals. That's the truth of it.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The UK-EU summit was noticeably scarce on medicine access cooperation, an area where we are failing massively behind compared to our European allies. Can the Prime Minister ask the Minister for Secondary Care to meet with me so we can discuss why only 25% of new cancer medicines approved by the EU are fully available in the UK?
Well, it raises a really important point, and we will continue our discussions with others to try to resolve some of the frustrations that common sense would suggest we can find a better solution to, and we will.
Lewis Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Sunderland is proud to be a city of makers, from cars to music. Without reversing Brexit, those makers need access to Europe. Whether it be exporters like Nissan need the certainty to export, or musicians need the freedom to tour. So can the Prime Minister outline how this deal will support good jobs in Sunderland, whether they be in the motor or the music industries?
Well, let me rest on his first example, which is cars, because both the India deal, which massively slashed the tariff on cars, is good for car manufacturing and good for car export. The deal with the US it saves thousands upon thousands of jobs in the car industry, and that's why it should be welcomed.
Joshua Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many will be concerned that the Prime Minister's EU deal does not cover UK's participation in future EU research programmes. So could the Prime Minister tell the House how he's going to ensure that we will be able to participate in future EU research programmes once Horizon finishes?
Well, we are committed, as he knows, to Horizon, and we'll retain that commitment in relation to research because it's so important for our own national interest.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It never ceases to surprise me how little the opposition understand about making trade deals, and maybe that's why they never made a good trade deal.
Well done.
But the people that we don't need to explain that to is the 19,000 small and medium-sized enterprises in my constituency in Milton Keynes. These businesses have been choked by the red tape agreed by the party opposite. And they agree with the Federation of Small Business that this finally reduces and gets rid of the bottleneck. Can he tell the businesses in my constituency and across the country when we can finally be relieved of the Tories' red tape that is crushing our small businesses?
Well, she's absolutely right about the red tape having such an impact on our small businesses, which is why I'm really pleased we've made progress. We now need to make further progress as quickly as we can to ensure businesses to thrive in the markets that they want to trade in.
Jim Allister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I note the carefully chosen wording of the Prime Minister's statement. Britain is back on the world stage, delivering for Britain, not the United Kingdom. I note that his SPS deal is with Great Britain. That, of course, is because Northern Ireland has already been captured by the EU, subject to its laws and its customs code. And that is why the Irish Sea border remains. Could I ask the Prime Minister, in regard to the SPS deal as it applies to Northern Ireland, is it correct that customs declarations and customs checks will still continue on goods from GB to Northern Ireland, even though they might be SPS goods? Those will still operate.
Yesterday was a step forward in that regard. It does allow us to reduce frustrations and barriers which nobody wants to see. And I can assure him, I genuinely want us to get into the best position we can in relation to Northern Ireland. It mattered to me in the negotiations, and one of the principles we took into them will continue with that work because I do know how much it matters.
Torquil Crichton.
Deputy Speaker. I suspect if there was a barrel of salt herring in it for every member of the opposition, this fishing deal would not be salty enough for them. But in fact, it's a sweet deal for prawn fishermen and shellfish fishermen in Hill and Near, for salmon producers, for crofters, though not for their lambs. And isn't the real betrayal of fishing communities the fact, the challenge for reform, that 80% of England's fishing quota is in the hands of foreign companies or the super-rich? The challenge for the SNP, that 45% of Scotland's quota is in the hands of a few companies, and the challenge for us to unwind that privatisation of the ocean and make sure that fishing communities across the UK benefit.
I'm grateful for this question. I think that's why it's so important that we're putting the money that we are, over £300 million, into working with those communities to take advantage of the deal that we struck yesterday.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We heard from ministers over the weekend that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. The Prime Minister said in his statement that the deal paves the way for access to the €150 billion defence industrial programme, SAFE. If everything has been agreed, then why does the Security and Defence Partnership not include access to the SAFE industrial programme now?
Because the programme itself is being developed at speed. It was only announced the other week. It was announced in response to and as part of the work we're doing with the Coalition of the Willing. And therefore, knocking out the first gateway was important. We will now work with the EU to ensure we can access that fund as quickly as possible. It's not a long existing fund that's been in place for years. It is developing at the moment in response to the situation in Ukraine. I think he does know that.
Alistair Strathern.
Speaker, I think the response to today's deal has been really quite striking. At a time when we need to be driving down on the cost of food for our constituents, retailers are lining up to say it will have that impact, and yet the Tories in Reform would like to put those costs back onto my constituents. At a time when we should be supporting our farmers and food producers, we're removing